Welcome, fellow wizards, to the Indie Game Lunch Hour. Today we're talking with Jordan Davenport, game designer at EA, about how to break into the game industry, the tips and tricks to help you get started.
The Indie Game Lunch Hour.
Wow. Welcome, everybody, to our live magical podcast, where we talk with experts from the game industry about how they got started in the game industry, how they got started in games. And we give the audience the chance to ask questions of those experts in the second half of each episode. As always, I'm your host, Willem Delventhal, the headmaster of the Indie Game Academy and the self-proclaimed Wizard of Joy. And joining me today is Jordan Davenport. Jordan is a game designer over at EA who's worked on a number of pretty cool projects. He also was at Lost Boys Interactive. For those who listen to the show, you may know the episode we had with Nathan Kelman a little while ago. I believe, Jordan, you're acquainted with Nathan.
Yes,
the two of them
good
work
dude.
together. Amazing. Very good dude. And today we're going to be talking about how to break into the game industry, tips and tricks, a tried and true topic that is definitely on the mind here always. So, Jordan, thank you for coming. What are you having for lunch today?
Well, first off, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to be here and chat about, I'm really passionate about helping people break into the industry because I was once one of those people who just needed some guidance and advice. So it's really cool to be here. For lunch, that is a fantastic question. My daughter decided that she didn't want to go to sleep until about 4 a.m. yesterday. So it's a mixture of like breakfast, lunch. So I'm kind of still deciding between the two.
For
You know,
lunch, you're going to have a nap.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's probably going to be the best route. I think she's actually in there taking a nap now, so I missed my window.
Amazing. Damn it. Well, thank you for being on the show instead of napping. That's a true sacrifice there. You're a true trooper for us.
No, definitely. I appreciate being here.
Absolutely. All right. Well, it's awesome to have you on the show, Jordan. Yeah, breaking in is, of course, why our school even exists. It's one of the primary topics that we talk about. It's one of the primary things that we're trying to figure out for our own audience. And it's one of the primary things we talk about with the guests on this podcast in pretty much every episode. To start that off, I think we'll just start with our staple first question, which is, tell us your origin story, Jordan. How did you break into games yourself, and how did you get to where you are today?
Cool. So I have a little bit of an untraditional path. I was a former college. I thought I was going to go to the NFL. It's going to be my career, and I was going to make good money being an NFL player. You realize really quick in college that the chances of that happening are very slim. So I needed to kind of
So you
pivot.
switched to game development instead, far more likely.
Oh yeah. Well, I had two super consistent things in my life, which was video games and sports. Those are two things that was always around. Thing that I was doing. If it wasn't for one thing, I was doing the other thing. So I was like, "Okay, cool. Maybe I'll try this." Because I saw on YouTube, I saw a ZBrush ad, and I was like, "That's cool. Like, let me try that." And then I tried ZBrush, and I'm no good at ZBrush. I am no artist. So shout out to all the artists out there. And yet, I just was like, I need a way into the industry. I did some research on my own. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I knew that the big place to be for video game development studios was California, at least at that time. And I was like, cool, I need to get out there, find some way out there. So me and my now wife, who was a fiance at the time, packed up my Ford 500 and we drove across country.
Wow.
It turns out I couldn't get to California because it was a little expensive. So I had to make a pit stop in Arizona. I went to Arizona State University for, my mother's going to hate this when she listens to it, but I went there for about a month before I decided that it just wasn't for me. I decided that, the curriculum that they were teaching, some of the students weren't very, my lane. So I decided that, okay, I'm going to go do my own thing. And I called my mom when I was sitting at the pool in my apartment complex and told her, I'm dropping out. So I hope you support me because I'm going to go make games. And and ever since then, I didn't have the money to start my own studio, so I borrowed it from my brother. He helped me on my feet, and I went ahead started my studio. Reggie Studios was my indie company, and everything just kind of trickled from there. I went and got a warehouse job to kind of support in the meantime because you have something you're doing while you're trying to get to the end goal. I did that for 2 years. I worked on a game that are released on console, self-published on console, called South of Nowhere. That ended up winning us a Epic Games grant for $25,000. So that was cool. That was
Incredible.
like this whole that kind of was my moment of like, okay, cool. I think I belong here.
You can
I think
do
this
it.
is what I'm supposed to be doing. Yeah. And then the game ended up coming out in March of 2019. I cried looking at the screen because it was 2 long years of working on the game that I had never made a game before. So I knew that if I put something on console, that'll look good.
Wow.
And ultimately, that was my story in. That title was my actual ticket into the industry. That was my first interview at Obsidian, and then I had an interview at Lost Boys Interactive, and then ultimately got the job through Lost Boys. So that kind of led me into EA, and that's my whole journey through all the way up to this point.
Wow, congratulations. So much of that was really is unusual, actually. We hear people starting studios all the time. I love that you are comfortable admitting that you went to school, went and then backed out and tried something else. That alone takes a lot of courage. Congratulations, Jordan.
Yeah, no, totally. And again, it wasn't something that I just did in the spur of the moment. I tried it. I gave it an effort. My parents are very much, you know, go to school, try it out. If you don't like it, fine, but you're going to give it an effort. My mom has preached that forever and ever and ever and ever. And then when I got there, I was like, okay, cool. I gave it a month, so you can't say I didn't try. So I gave it an effort, and or a month or whatever it was, and it just ended up not being for me. So I decided to just cool. I'll just make my own path, as hard as that may be. Why not try?
Incredible. It sounds to me like our two moms would actually really get along. Is she? Would you consider her? Would you use the term hard ass or no?
A tad bit, yes, for sure,
Yeah.
for sure. She is very
Okay.
much lightened up now. Now that I'm like actually in the field and I make games, I do this for a living. She's like, "Oh, that's so cool." Every time I tell her, she just thinks it's cool. So
She's like, okay, all right, fine, I guess.
yeah, I get it now. I get it. It's cool.
Yeah, amazing. It's funny too that you grew up in Pittsburgh. That's actually where I was born, and recently I went back for the very first time ever. And man,
What?
it's actually super cool. I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
What part?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. No, because I'm from Penn Hills, but I spent a lot of time in Oakland. So like
Okay.
a lot of times I was literally 5 minutes from Pitt.
Yeah, we
Pitt
are. I really
University.
am not familiar with the areas well enough to be able to talk about it.
Mm,
We're across the river, not in the main city itself.
mm.
And I don't even know any landmarks to give
I
you
can
really.
picture it. I can
Pittsburgh.
picture it. I got
Yeah,
you. I got you.
yeah,
Yeah,
cool.
no, cool. That's super dope. Finally, another
Yeah,
Pittsburgh.
some other Pittsburgh people. I actually think
Yeah,
Pittsburgh is really cool. I didn't, I knew of Pittsburgh, of course, because I was born there, but we left there before I really had much memory of it. I've got a couple little memories.
yeah,
And finally went back and discovered what a cool place, actually.
yeah.
Love it here.
The funny enough, I was at GDC, and the shout out to Shannon Loftus. She is the ex VP of Microsoft, I believe, and she's from
Okay,
Pittsburgh. She's from Mount Lebanon. So cool little
awesome.
Pittsburgh people floating around. So that's pretty cool.
Little Pittsburgh vibes. Also, we've got
Yeah,
Nathan in the chat who's trying to get your attention. Says he misses you.
Nathan, I miss you too, man. All the work we've done, so I miss you too.
Amazing. All right. Well, I think there's a lot to potentially talk about here. I think actually the place that I want to start is starting the studio and getting that Epic Mega Grant, because both of those things are things that our audience dreams of doing. And the first one is largely within your control, and the second one, of course, is not. So give me a little bit of that story. Tell me, first of all, how starting the studio went, maybe a little bit of what you learned along the way, and then tell me the story of finding that Epic Mega Grant.
Cool. So starting the studio was a little bit tricky because I had never done that either. I knew a lot of friends who have started companies in the past, and we were all, I mean, at the time I did it, I was 21, so I kind of knew the general vibe of like how to start a business, but I didn't really. I think the biggest thing that I ran into trouble with was getting a company bank account, company credit card, and taxes. Those were the
Hmm.
three things that I had no experience with prior. Well, maybe like a bank account, but as far as like really like credit card stuff and like spending it to then put the money back on, mixed with like just paying the taxes of a normal studio, that was all very new to me. I had to get advice from, oh man, it might sound cliche and corny, but I called H&M Block a bunch of times to try to get like a general, how do I do this? And then they were like, cool, if you do this, this, and this, you will be fine. And I'm like, okay, cool, I will do just that.
Thank you.
Or like, yeah, literally, or paying taxes through the year, like on anything that you make, especially with S.O.N being out in the world now, like, it still gets revenue every quarter. So you got to pay your share to the government as you go along. So that was new for me because I was just like, I work and then at the end of the year I get income tax. So, it's just a little different. But outside of that, that was probably the hardest parts for me. I genuinely enjoy owning a business now. I think it's really cool. I think it's something that I want to do for the foreseeable future. Even taking a little bit of a pause, it's just kind of one of those things where, like, I think ultimately that's my run off into the sunset. It's just kind of doing my own indie thing because being in AAA and some people in here kind of know about it as well. The AAA scene is cool, but I think a lot of the times you kind of want your little bit of your own like creative freedom. So I think that's going to be my sunset drive, as they call it.
Amazing. I feel that too. I wanna do the Stardew Valley thing like towards the end of life. I'm at like 50, 55, 60. Just spend 5 years making a game. I don't know what it'll be. We'll leave it to then, but absolutely 100%.
Go on a farm in Switzerland and just start making the next Stardew. There you go.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah. 100%. The Epic Mega Grant though, so tell us about that.
Yeah.
Like how did that happen? Was it just kind of a submission and then you got a really cool email, or was there more to it?
So I want to say this at the beginning. I also want to shout out Christian Allen. So Christian Allen is a former evangelist at Epic Games. He was the first person that kind of brought up the grants to me, and he also was the first person who gave me feedback on just my game as a whole. I remember calling him one time because I had an issue with something going on in Unreal, and then they tie you to an evangelist for like North America, Europe, or anywhere that you're located. And he was like, okay, cool. Like, this is a cool game, but like you don't have anything kind of documented behind it and you're not really describing it. And I kind of took that to heart because I was like, I'm really passionate about this project. So I need to, next time I call this man, I need to be on my P's and Q's. So I called him the next time, had a whole GDD. We had a 2-hour long conversation. Everything was great. A little bit after that, I had just applied for the Epic Mega Grant. This was in 2017. Yeah, a little bit after I started my studio, a little bit after I kind of had made a demo. So I'm a big believer in what I call kind of playing the game. And playing the game kind of is like, doing the things that you need to do that are not going against your moral ethic codes to get to where you need so you can be the person to make the change, right? So you kind of got to play the game until you get to that point. And I knew that connections were huge in the industry. Even already doing it for a year, I just knew that it was huge in the industry. And I knew that Christian was going to be someone that was going to fight and be in my corner. So I called him up again and was like, hey, I applied for the grant, like any other submission tips that you got or anything for that. He gave me quite a few. And I went ahead and put those into a resubmission, because they let you edit it, resubmission of the trailer video. So that happened. Now, I didn't hear anything for a year. So in that period of time, I had started dropping trailers onto PlayStation YouTube channel. So, I was like, I'm not hearing anything. I'm not really heard about it. It was just a chance in the dark, and we'll kind of see what happens. But I need to put my game out there because marketing is king. So I was like, what is the biggest platform I can put this out on? And at the time, it was PlayStation's YouTube channel. They had like 9 million subscribers or something like that. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm just going to make a bunch of trailers and throw them onto there. And that is exactly what I did. My first trailer in 24 hours did 120,000 views. The second one did 190. To the final trailer, the one right before the release trailer, ended up doing, I think right now, it's at 491,000 views on YouTube, on PlayStation's channel. And over time, that gained articles. That started to get popularity, started getting people talking about it. And then at the end of 2018 is kind of when I reached out to another person, Dana, and was asking about EULA agreement stuff. Really random. And she answered back, fantastic person. And then at the very end of the message, she goes, so yeah, by the way, you won the Epic Games grant. Literally, I had almost forgotten at that point. Like, I had no idea that this was going to work. Like, this had no idea that I was going to get picked or anything. So yeah, they ended up was like, hey, you win the grant. We're gonna give you $25,000. Thanks for using Unreal. Your project looks great. Best of luck on launch. So it was very much I think, a matter of, talking to the evangelists and the people who are a part of that program to kind of give you some tips and tricks on the insights of that, and then on the back half of that, at the end of the day, everything is kind of a business, right? So when you put your game out there, there has to be some type of new mechanic that is kind of fresh and interesting, or there's some type of popularity behind it, whether in articles or YouTube videos, or it goes viral on Twitter or Reddit or something to that effect. And I think ultimately both of those combined created the great potion that eventually won me the grant. So
Wow, what a fantastic story. So many great call outs there. I actually want to spend 1 second to call out a comment. So Mark in the comments is saying, thank you for the nuts and bolts answers. And I think it's a really good point. Like you were just talking about, taxes were one of the biggest things they had to deal with.
yeah.
I just reached out to this dude and asked for advice. I was reaching out and being proactive and getting YouTube videos onto their channels. There's a lot of what you're talking about that is just grunt work. And I think that's something that a lot of game developers uh, maybe realize, but avoid perhaps. One way or another, they don't really include that as a part of what they're doing in their studios. But it is absolutely essential. First of all, stay legal, please.
Yes.
But second of all, simple things like reaching out and asking for advice really can make the difference between $0 and $25,000, and you never quite know when that moment is going to happen. That applies for job applications. That applies for pretty much anything where somebody else can affect the outcome that isn't you.
Yeah, no, totally. I highly advise anybody in the industry, outside of the industry, trying to break in, whatever the case is, just ask around. The worst that anyone
Mhm.
can literally say, that's how I viewed it, even with the taxes. I am no accountant. I don't know any of that. Like, just ask. If they say no,
Mhm.
okay, cool. Move on to somebody else. Someone will give you the time of day. That has been my philosophy since day one. So,
Yeah. And for that matter, some stuff like taxes, people are really scared of because they think that they're gonna mess it up and everything's gonna go wrong or whatever.
mm.
Um, but better to find out that you're messing it up than to get sued or audited, you know?
Yeah, yeah. No, mess it up, and then the IRS will be like, "Hey, you messed up, so let's fix this together." Instead of you ignoring it for 9 years, and then they're like, "Okay, cool, now time to bring down the house." So just deal with it, get it out early, and you'll be good going forward. There'll be, I mean, just taxes specifically, they'll be willing to work with you, especially if you're newer.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, Nathan says this is another good one. Big people think people don't realize is they want to start a studio, but they don't realize that that's a business. It's very true.
yeah,
If you're starting a
yep,
studio, you're an entrepreneur, you're a founder, you're running a business, and a business that just so happens to have a game as the product.
yep.
But we're not necessarily here to talk about business development, although this has been a great conversation so far. We're here to talk about the tips that you have to help people break into the industry. So I'm curious, do you have like a 101 for us? Can you teach us, Jordan Davenport, the introduction to breaking into the game industry, please?
Yeah. So just for background purposes, I'm going to also speak about my experiences mixed with I did reach out to some recruiters. So I was active. So I was active at recruiters at EA. There's a couple of the different ones that I had talked to, and even at Lost Boys. So one of the big ones that I had heard was, a lot of people don't put their work on LinkedIn. I've been hearing from a lot of recruiters that right now, you just want to apply, apply, apply. You have an art station, which is great. You have a portfolio, which is great. But right now, all the recruiters and a lot of people who are, getting jobs is coming through LinkedIn. So a lot of your work that you make, you can post active updates onto LinkedIn. For example, I have done the exact same thing. I am a game designer at heart, but or a game designer under the umbrella, but I'm a level designer at heart. I've been trying to learn lighting, and recently I've been posting some stuff on LinkedIn about lighting, and that ultimately led me to someone reaching out and being like, "Hey, like, are you looking for a job? Because we got something over here." You know what I mean? You got to respectfully decline, but I think it's a matter of just like posting your work, because you never know who's watching. You may think I only have 10 connections or 15 connections, but it really just takes one post for a recruiter to see that and be like, okay, cool, I'm going to keep them on my radar, even if they're new, still in school. It doesn't matter, because a lot of what you're posting may actually be what they're looking for. The second thing that I've constantly been hearing is, don't worry too much about the state of the industry right now. Keep applying. I've been hearing that recruiters are getting hired by the bunch at a lot of these studios. Everything does look scary right now. There's a lot of layoffs going on, but as much as I've talked to even people at EA, the big conglomerate 28,000 employee EA, they've been saying like, we're going to start ramping up because there's a lot of like projects that are coming down the door. Studios are starting to kind of like stabilize again. So, don't feel as if like, well, I can't apply because right now there's a bunch of seniors looking for a job. What do they want with me as a junior? Please don't do that, because I think you're only hurting your chances and delaying the process of potentially you getting a job. As I said earlier, continuously apply. The worst that they can say is no. Maybe you get feedback, maybe you don't, and then you kind of keep it pushing forward. So don't ever, look at the industry right now and be like, man, I got to leave right now because it's not going to be beneficial to me. I think there's a long-term play in there. So just stay positive and stick with it. And then another point that I have, because I'm just going off of everything because I'm keeping it in my brain right now, is I talked to a recruiter at a AAA studio who is recruiting design right now. And he was saying how he very much enjoys portfolios that a lot of the pieces that they make, we'll just use level design as this example, that are replicated in their games. So an example, this isn't a recruiter for money, but an example I'd like to use is you really are a big fan of The Last of Us. You love The Last of Us, you love Uncharted, you love every game that they kind of make, right? Not saying that your whole portfolio should be levels that they make, but you can make them in the same vein. One of the big reasons that I see on this is because, the first person you're trying to beat or get past in the door is a recruiter. So you need to kind of look good to the recruiter. They need to see, okay, you know what? Let me look at this. Nathan made a level that looks really good. And it looks, it's a post-apocalyptic abandoned building with a blown out side wall that you can kind of venture through, kill some zombies, drop down, and like be in a totally different area. Very much like Last of Us. Loot, kill some zombies, there's a narrative point, and then you kind of repeat. Putting those as your pieces will get the eye to them and be like, okay, cool, they kind of already fit in the pipeline. So let's see what they are like as a person. And then that's when you kind of get the call of like, hey, love what you got going here. Let's just see if the vibe check is right, because that's any major studio's first call in the first place. They just want to see if you're cool. They just want to see if they can actually work with you or if you're some cocky person. Really make pieces that fits into that studio. Like if you want to work for a Naughty Dog, try to aim not all of your portfolio, but some pieces very much to what the type of games they make. Same with Santa Monica. There was a person that I had talked to who did a lot of like axe work in their like private projects on Unreal Engine 4 that ended up landing them an interview. So I think they kind of see that and they go, okay, perfect. Like, the axe in Kratos and God of War is so specific, and he's a technical designer, so maybe he'll be able to transfer this over here into something else that works. So you just kind of fit the pipeline, and you want to get past the recruiter and look the most appealing, literally from the jump. So
amazing. These are great tips. They're also, I know they're good tips because they're tips that I've heard before. We've got multiple places confirming that they're good tips.
Nice.
I came up with a random metaphor. I'm going to talk about, I want us to talk about all three of these tips. The three that I heard are use LinkedIn and LinkedIn and other social media platforms, I think, but LinkedIn really is a hotbed for this. Use LinkedIn and post updates about what you're doing, what you're working on, and really engage with that community because you never know where somebody's going to come from. Number two is to don't worry about the industry so much. It's a large beast that you can't really control. It will correct. And then number three is portfolio pieces for specific studios, which I love. So I have a random metaphor for that second one that I kind of like. Do you play Warhammer 40K?
I don't. No. I've heard so much about it. Everybody that I talk to, all designers talk about it all day long. I haven't.
Yeah.
No.
So a new player in Warhammer 40K gets excited. Oh wait, okay. So for reference, it's a tabletop war game. It's really the tabletop war game. So you got a bunch of little figures. You go to a little war. You try to pretend that you aren't just playing with plastic army men.
Gotcha.
Uh, right. A beginner Warhammer 40K player is generally picks a faction that they're really excited about. They're going to be the orcs or they're going to be the Tau or whatever. They buy a bunch of pieces. They learn the rules. They play a couple of games, and then inevitably there's a moment where the rules change because they are constantly balancing Warhammer 40K so that one faction doesn't destroy another. There are hundreds of thousands of players, probably maybe millions, I don't even know, of players in Warhammer 40K. So balancing that game is a whole headache. So a rules change comes, they hit a new edition or they release a new core rulebook for your army or whatever, and suddenly your army composition is terrible. This like meticulous thing that you've probably spent $1,000 building up is just like wrong now.
Yeah.
And there's like nothing you can do about it. And a new player, the first time that happens, gets pissed. And they go on forums and they're like, oh, what the heck? Like, I spent so much money and I painted all these figures. Like, this is ridiculous. But a veteran player knows that that's just kind of the ebb and flow. You know, this army and these units that you bought, yeah, now they do suck, genuinely. But they're going to come back at some point, first of all. The rule changes are always happening. And second of all, that's just kind of the meta of the game. That's the meta of most games, for that matter. Typically, one strategy doesn't work forever. And it's just normal. It comes and it goes, and that's normal. So think of that metaphor for the game industry as a whole. It's a meta that evolves. The skills that you pick up may not apply because of various changes. You know, AI suddenly hits the scene, and we all have to learn AI and like use that in our workflows all of a sudden. All you can really do is continue to track that meta and follow that meta as best you can, and be patient and accept that sometimes things suck, like right now, but they will change.
No, totally. And to and to expand on that just a little bit, I think
Mm-hmm.
if you want to be in the game industry, and this goes for anybody, and Nathan, because I've worked with him and he knows, like they will tell you, you can't ever stop learning. Like that's it's corny and it's like never stop learning. It is so true. Everything is changing. The industry is not what the industry was 2 years ago. The practices that they used 2 years ago are completely gone compared to like what they're using now. Like switching even to UE5 and some of the
Yeah.
practices that they're using in Unreal Engine 5 versus 4 it's just different. So always pay attention to what is going on in the industry, follow trends, follow who's trying to make what happen, like AI and stuff like that. Like, AI is a touchy subject, but at least just pay attention to what's getting
Yeah.
picked up into the industry so you can be ahead of the curve because the last thing you need is to actually be in an industry you don't know what's going on and then imposter syndrome sets in and all these type of stuff because you feel like you're behind the curve. So
Yeah.
just pay attention, be aware of your surroundings, listen to what everybody's talking about, whether good or bad, so you can at least get a sneak peek of what's coming around the corner.
Yeah. There's an old saying that if you aren't learning, you're dying. And I think
Yeah,
honestly, that's true.
no,
There's
100%.
there's a certain type of senior who like refuses new technology, who says like, no, this is the way we've always done it. And those people have merit, I think, there's still value there. I think there's always value, I guess, in the diversity of thought that comes with, well, this is how we used to do it. But at the same time, those people will inevitably become outdated. Those skills will inevitably become outdated. And that's just kind of how it is. That's not just the game industry for that matter. That's everything. Now, we
Everything.
talked about using LinkedIn to consistently update yourself and showcase what you're working on. And we talked about portfolio pieces for another game. And I think for another studio. I think that one is one of the most novel pieces of information here. If you were a let's say like narrative designer, that's somebody that we have a lot of in this community that I feel like get a little bit less service because there's a lot of people trying to do them and there's just not that many jobs. So let's say you're trying to work in writing a narrative, and you're not sure what to work on for portfolio pieces, and you've just heard this advice from this cool dude Jordan Davenport. uh, what might you recommend? Like, what should they focus on? How should they approach this? Should they like go find a company they like, or and build a game for them, or what? How do they do that?
I would heavily look into a lot of companies that are pretty narrative driven. Like the one that just comes off the top of my head because I actually know somebody that got a narrative design job as of late was at Bethesda. They played a bunch of Bethesda games. They spent tons and tons of hours between Starfield, Fallout to literally they've everything, and they've just spent a lot of time like creating branching narratives, right? And so I've been seeing this specific person went ahead and used a asset pack that they had found on Unreal Engine, which was a walkie-talkie, a lot like the game Fire, and they kind of built a level, very basic level because they're not a level designer, but they built a level that had a cool narrative aspect to it. So they used this walkie-talkie. It was kind of like Firewatch, but it had a dialogue system with multiple choices that kind of impacted the end of the route, or the end of the path, much like a Bethesda game. So I would very much look at your favorite games, kind of mimic what they do, and then get to writing some really cool stuff. Like maybe you can collab with a level designer and make a level together and try to have full narrative elements that affect something for a small demo. I think if you can literally design something from a narrative perspective and show that you're writing pretty well, I think even I'd even argue decent because they just want to see that you can do it. That will kind of carry you that will carry you pretty far. That's much like the level designers, right? Like if you're making something for a studio, just kind of replicate what they got going on and what they're making, and then they'll kind of see that and see that you can fit in. I believe the same kind of goes for a narrative designer.
Yeah. And how much, so when you're building stuff like that, how novel should this be? Meaning, should I kind of try to replicate a Bethesda level, or should I give it my own spin?
I think you should replicate it to the extent, like you should go to like 75, 80%, right? Like make
Mhm.
something that is recognizable off face value. So if a recruiter's looking at this and wow, that looks like a Bethesda level, or it looks like something in Starfield or something to that effect. And then add your own kind of twist on it. So it's not a just straight one for one mirror because there's not a lot of creativity in that. I think that again, the whole point being is that you want the recruiter to see this and be an eye-catching thing. They want to see it and recognize what's kind of going on right off rip, and then as soon as they hit the play button, maybe for the demo that you have, or checks out a video of something to that effect, then they can be like, oh, okay, cool. They did some like cool narrative stuff on the side here. There's a different level off to the side, or there's a plan C, D, and E, or something to that effect. So they'll see it and they'll be able to, kind of kind of gauge what's going on. So I wouldn't say
Yeah.
completely one to one it, but definitely give it like a 75%, enough that the face value looks like something that they would recognize from their own studio because they're well versed in it. They know what's going on. They can
Awesome.
recognize anything from a mile away. So
Yeah, great advice. And I think it's a mindset shift. We often talk, it's almost a meme here at the Indie Game Academy that we talk about releasing games.
mm,
And I think that's true. I have also heard from many people, many recruiters, that mods actually don't count as much as a full title, but actually do count
mm,
towards getting your way in the door. So, if you're modding some of your favorite games and you're, imagine including like a really cool quest line in Skyrim or something, and then using that as a piece of evidence for a quest designer role that you were going for. That is absolutely something that they're going to care about.
yeah,
Um, and shows that you're capable of using their system, for instance, and shows that you're capable of thinking in their world. But I do think I was curious what you would say. I do think it is important to showcase your unique like vibe because I
oh,
think as developers we're always looking for that. We hired writers for Tailmore back in the day, and one of my favorite writers, one of the people that I was like hands down like, yep, we're hiring this person. The writing test was to take our god of decay in this world in our IP called Belgot, and every other writer wrote, some creepy version of like Nurgle from Warhammer or something, or they're like this
yeah,
nasty being. This writer made a sleazy car salesman, like just a regular person, but they were just like kind of a sleazy dude, and it was
yeah,
hysterical and perfect. And I was like, yes, you're hired.
yeah. Yeah, no, be you. Have your own spin. Be you. Don't try to, fit into a box that you think they'll just want. You know what I mean? Like again, face value, look at it, let them know what they're looking at, and then let speak through your work.
Yeah,
Let them see your personality, whether that's humor, serious, dark, whatever the case is. Just kind of be you.
love that. All right, so we are past time for community questions. I've just had too much fun chatting with you, Jordan. Rick is now on stage with the first community question. Rick, would you like to open it up?
Yeah. So congratulations on getting your South of Nowhere game out. That's always a huge accomplishment. I'm
Thank you.
wondering how did it function as your ticket into the industry? Like, did you apply and it was on your portfolio and it was a piece that set you apart, or did somebody see you publishing it and then they reached out to you?
Gotcha. So when I applied, so it was my ticket into the industry. and I think God love him, but Chase Jones is one of the people that really pushed me up. He's the chief product officer at Lost Boys Interactive, and he kind of gave me the rundown on actually why they hired me on that end, and it had to do with S.O.N because he had mentioned that when you're shipping your own game and it's on console, not to take away from anybody shipping on itch or Epic Game Store or PC or anything like that, but you're taking something from concept all the way to a shipped product that is physically on the PlayStation Store. And working at a studio like Lost Boys, they're working on console titles, so that was something that I at least had experience in. And to kind of couple that, I mean, he saw Drive. That was his big thing. Like, it's not easy shipping a console game and going through the whole work of even trying to get the consoles and everything like that. Like, some people and some people who are in hiring positions really value people who will go the extra mile to kind of do what they need to do and get something launched. And that was my ticket into the industry. Like, I applied around, nobody came to me. Whenever I applied, they seen the work from Obsidian to Lost Boys, and they really valued the time that I took to actually develop this game from start to finish and actually launch it and not kind of give up on it. I also think that the Games Grant kind of helped on that as well because of the amount of effort that I went through with that as well to try to like get the notoriety for that. So just drive and passion. Honestly, it sounds wild, but some people do actually care about it up there.
So it sounds like it set you apart in that you weren't somebody who would need to have their hand held.
Yeah, that's a good point. Even though they still do, I would argue if you're an associate or junior or an associate in the industry, they will hold your hand because it's kind of their job, but they will also make sure that you're competent. You can do what you can do in the industry. So yeah, no, shipping that game, it was very much so that I think he kind of was like, okay, he gets it. I don't need to walk him along and do whatever. So we can kind of just throw him in and go.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep. An extension of that question from Surya in the comments. At that time, was that like unique? Did you get any sense or vibe of how much of a unicorn you were for having a full studio with a released game?
Yes. So again, I only applied to two places. The only places that hit me back was Obsidian and Lost Boys, and both had said like we're actually really interested in how you did it because you don't see that very often. A lot of people don't even work in Unreal; they work in Unity for a project, and that kind of, at least for Lost Boys, I remember talking to the recruiter. That kind of caught him off guard. He was like, "What made you use Unreal versus Unity?" And then that trickled down from there. So at that time, yeah, that was rare from the two people that I brought up my experience to. They were like, "This is cool. You kind of actually get it. Like you actually know what it takes to go from setting a company up and GDD all the way to launch." So
absolutely. Awesome. Yeah, I get the sense that there are a lot of people working on their own games, but starting a studio, which once again, we're talking about the business side of it, honestly, more so than like making a game side of it. I think that is fairly unique. And then actually finishing and releasing that game is huge. For that matter, something that's maybe more attainable for people. We had the founders of Coin Crew Games come on here a couple of weeks ago. I mentioned this learning from them because I think it's a good one pretty often, which is simply that they actually really respect game jam titles and will look for those on applications and portfolios because it shows that you went through the whole process and managed to commit all the way through and release the game. Because so many game jam titles just like fall apart.
yeah, no, I love that. I really think people who do game jams, like the amount of games that you put out, the games that you go through and ship through that time period should absolutely count. Like if any recruiter that says otherwise, you probably shouldn't. You should just pass for that moment because what you do and what you ship is legit. Don't ever let anybody tell you that was period. That's out. We're not doing that. So
okay.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. Community question number 2. I'm going to ask for Misha. Misha asks, if I have experience in multiple studios or industries, including animation and VR, how does that work? How does that look? Also, when working on multiple indie titles as a freelancer and contractor, how can I add my project titles without overburdening my resume?
Yeah, so I would just offer it for whatever titles that you do have. I would kind of pick the ones that you feel most passionate about because, which may be hard to do. Maybe you did 5 and you love all 5, but I would pick maybe 3-ish or something like that. So that way, when you get into one of these calls with these recruiters and they see one of these on the list, you can actually speak the most to it. Sometimes, you may have the more popular one on there, but I think at the end of the day, people really want to see passion, like real passion. Like when you're speaking about the project, like you love this regardless if it did well or if it didn't. You spoke about everything that you did on there that fit your general like your vibe going into the industry. As far as what you've done, it's kind of like a generalist sake, but I would very much apply for jobs that you feel comfortable doing one over the other. So if it is animation and you have good experience doing animation, I would go in there, and then a lot of times people, including myself, will actually get into a studio, start to talk with leads and managers and X, Y, and Z, and be like, "Hey, I'm also kind of good at this," and then they kind of throw you over there. That's literally what happened to me. I was a level designer, and then I got to working with a few other people, and they were like, "Hey, go try this. Go try this landscaping on the art side, and stuff like that." So once you're in the studio, a lot of times you can kind of pivot around, and they actually kind of like that. It makes you a little bit valuable because you can kind of get thrown in wherever that you're going. So I would definitely pick. You can mention everything, but pick one that you feel most solid in and you have the most experience in, and then get into the studio that way, and then bring up other stuff that you've done.
Yeah, in general, this is aligned with what I hear as well, which is for the most part, generalizing is not good for juniors. There's like general rules out there. I'm a generalist, which like I don't know, I feel like
Same.
yeah, right. But in general, people are looking for very specific things for junior roles and associate roles. So especially like if you're doing like 5 different areas of art, like that's different than doing like both game design and engineering and art. Like that second one, I would say is much more of a sin. As best you can, I would pick one thing to focus on and pull out all the parts of all your projects about that thing that you can, whether it be level design like Jordan or 3D modeling or whatever. And then, as Jordan is saying, you can transition later. It isn't forever. It's just for this round of applications until you get a role, because it will only help you, as far as I have heard and seen, to be a little bit more specific.
100%. I'd agree with that. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Mark's question is next. Mark also does not want to get on stage, but that's cool. I will read it for you. LinkedIn is its own beast of social media. This is like a really good question. Is its own beast of social media, and it has kind of its own rules. What would be the structure of a good post showing an accomplishment on LinkedIn?
This one's interesting. So you are right. LinkedIn is very much a beast now with all the recruiters and everybody just kind of. There's a whole thing now with LinkedIn being a popularity thing. Like everybody has a big voice on LinkedIn, which is cool and it's great, because a lot of people from the industry are on that platform, so it's a good place to speak on. As far as accomplishments, I can at least tell you what I did. I got selected for the Amplifying New Voices program out in GDC, earlier this year, and I would just talk about what it means to not only you but kind of who you're kind of doing it for, and that might be vague, but what I'm trying to get at is like for me personally, I come from the inner city of Pittsburgh. I come from underrepresented and underfunded school district and Penn Hills. Like it's just they didn't have a video game development course. I go home, they call me a unicorn. Like I'm trying to change that narrative. That's not something that I want to be doing. And so if you have an accomplishment or if you've done something really cool and you have something that you're also passionate about inside of the industry, couple that together. So it doesn't just feel like, at least on the imposter side, you can go on there and put, I got selected for this. I am super grateful. Thank you. And just leave it at that. But if you're more of like, I don't want this to kind of come off the wrong way, couple that in with something that you're kind of passionate about in the industry, because that's very much what I do. I try to at least be a voice for kids growing up in there that don't really have a way out, and they see video game development as a way out through me or something of that sort. So that's kind of the route that I take. So yeah, there's 2 ways you can go about it, but if you're more like, I don't want to be too wild and upfront with it, just kind of blend it into what you're mentioning. So.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like my main 2 approaches for it is like, 1, like what value can I give to the audience? And then 2, like what do I just like to talk about? Because naturally that's going to be much more, you're going to just produce much better content if you like actually want to be talking about it. And if you can find the combination of the 2, then you're golden.
Spot on.
All right. I think. Wow. I'm gonna need to turn that down. That's very loud. That means it is time for the question of the day, where we reiterate one of the most important points that we learned from Jordan for House Cup points. First person to type in the chat the correct answer to this question gets 3 House Cup points. This is how we make things fun and try to remember some of the most important stuff. If you are listening, speak the answer out loud for us. All right, so Jordan gave us 3 primary tips to help break into the game industry. What are those 3 tips? Write them in the chat for us. First person gets some points. Do you think they'll get it, Jordan?
I think so.
Mimic what your
I
favorite
feel it.
games do. That's one of them. I've asked for all 3, which is a big ask. Normally, I would only ask for 1. Color Optimist, you've got 1. If you give me the other 2, I'll give it to you. Rick says curate your portfolio to the job. Same thing. Post to LinkedIn, curate portfolio, and apply. Ah, almost. So
Yeah.
close. Ghost Cat, if you can fix, I'll give you a tip for both you, Ghost Cat, and for anybody else. And apply is the one that is incorrect. Make portfolio pieces that match the studio you want. Mimic your favorite games industry. Don't be intimidated by what the industry is doing. Surya gets the points. Surya, congratulations. The 3 main tips, absolutely, that we got from Jordan were: number 1, use LinkedIn to post updates about what you're doing, what you care about talking about. Number 2, don't care about the industry too much. It's just Warhammer 40k rules and it will change over time anyway. And then number 3, portfolio pieces built for the places that you actually want to work. Surya wants to give points to House Ranger. Incredible. All right, we are at the end of the episode. Before we say goodbye, though, there are 2 things we like to do. Number 1, Jordan, do you have a homework assignment that you can give to the listeners to help them practice some of the stuff that you taught us here today that they can do in the next week?
Yeah, I would say if you're whatever position that you are in, whatever that you want to do into the industry, go challenge yourself, look at your favorite games, look at your favorite studios, see what games they make, and try to make a portfolio piece. I think that would be something that you can do. A lot of, it's cool to talk about it now, but actionable pieces that are kind of like, oh, I was just here, so I'm gonna go do this now. So kind of just in the next week, go try it out. You got the homework task. We were just chatting about it, so see what you can come up with.
Nice. Okay, when we say portfolio piece, are we talking about a finished game? Are we talking about like a small piece, like a GDD or a level or something like that?
Like a level, something small. So don't overwork yourself. It's also holiday season. But take your time. Just something small. Just make a little what we call a beautiful corner. Just something that is just representative of the game, but is a really compact, small area. So don't go too
Love
crazy.
it.
You don't got to make a open world RPG. So
Awesome. All right. So your homework from Jordan is to, in the next week, think of a game or a studio that you really want to work for and then create a beautiful corner for that game. Depending on what your vertical is, create yourself a small part that could have contributed to that game. If you really want to work as a quest designer, design a quest. If you really want to work as level designer, design a level. If you really want to do code, maybe code a new enemy class. I don't know, something cool like that. Make yourself a beautiful corner of the game. And then, as always, we've recently started trying to get people to post this to create some sense of community. So on LinkedIn and or here in our Discord, post your homework when you finish it using the hashtag IGLH homework, Indie Game Lunch Hour homework, IGLH homework. All right, it is definitely the end of the episode. Jordan, is there anything you want to plug here at the end, or any last words you want to give to the audience?
I'm not a big plug guy, but I do want to leave it with one parting thing that I'd just like to say at the end. Video game development is a dream job. Video game development changed my life in almost every facet, from financial to just general well-being. I found my purpose through this, and there's a lot of people to thank, but I just want to kind of give a shout out to Chase Jones. He really changed my life in video games. So I want to make sure I threw that out there. Yeah, continue as it may be cliche, but genuinely chase your dreams. This industry is really cool. It's a dream job. People look up to you for doing stuff like this. So when you get here, not if you get here, when you get here, just be a light for everybody. Make sure you help the next person up. We don't need to gatekeep. It's useless. So.
Hell yeah. Dude, what a fantastic final message.
Cool.
Carry that torch, light the torch of others. One match lighting another match does not lessen itself in any way. Hell yeah, let's light this place up and make this a beautiful industry. Okay, that's going to be it. Jordan, thank you so much for being here, answering these questions, giving us your insights. Those who ask
Absolutely.
questions, thank you for asking. Listeners, thank you for listening. As always, we ask if you enjoyed the episode that you think of just one other person who may also enjoy and send it along to them for us. Okay, that's going to be it.
Cool.
We'll see you back here Wednesday, 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Links to join the Discord down below. And yeah, thanks everybody. See you next time.
Thank you.
Bye, Jordan.
Bye.
All right, goodbye, everybody.